Hey there, this is Tim from Black Swamp Percussion, and you are listening to episode 3 of our new Black Swamp podcast series. Basically, we're connecting with BSP artists, educators, and friends who are making some great contributions to our little percussion community and learning more about their musical journeys and hopefully taking something away we didn't know before. So thanks to everyone who listened to our first couple of episodes. Be sure to tell your friends and subscribe wherever you discover your podcasts. And of course, an Apple Podcast rating never hurts either. Wink, wink. Today's podcast features a conversation with BSP artist Todd Meehan. Todd teaches at Baylor University in Texas as approximately one half of the Meehan Perkins Duo, founding member of So Percussion, if you've heard of them, and mastermind behind Liquidrum. If you're not familiar with Liquidrum, you're probably not on social media, which is commendable but unrealistic, I guess. Liquidrum has a very unique take on percussion pedagogy and culture, which I'll let you discover for yourself on Facebook, Instagram, or www.liquidrum.com. That's www.liquidrum.com. And of course, we'll talk more about all of that now with Todd.
Hey.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your schedule and having a chat with us.
Of course.
What I really want to get to is Liquidrum.
Great.
Obviously, but maybe a few things just for context before that. So
right.
Kind of how you got started, what your involvement with So, and then Meehan Perkins Duo,
right.
kind of your education before that. So maybe we can walk through that a little bit, and then we'll get to where you are now.
Great. Yeah. So you want me to just kind of give the background story to start with?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I know you're in Texas now. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. So that's kind of, at least as far as my wife and I, as far as we're concerned, that's kind of the one of the best things about it is that we are both from Texas originally, and ended up back here, which is I think ultimately what we wanted to do. Right. So I had a pretty typical Texas band kid upbringing. I'm not one of those musicians that started, violin at 3 or piano at 5 or anything like that. I had an older brother who played the trumpet. He's 4 years older than me. Okay. He had a lot of percussionist friends, and so in some way I was influenced by both my brother and his friends, and just being involved in middle school and high school bands. So I started in 6th grade, just outside of Houston. And did, the middle school, high school Texas band scene in all its glory. And had many of the both upsides and downsides, I think, of that. It's a pretty intense musical existence.
Right. I was going to ask, obviously, band programs in Texas now are huge, but so that's always sort of been the case.
Right. So I was in middle school in the late 80s, and my high school years spanned 91 to 95.
Sure.
So I was young then, so I didn't necessarily have kind of the broader concept of how big this thing was. But looking back now, I can see that it was pretty serious business. The good part of that is that I had a lot of really great resources at my fingertips, namely in the form of really good teachers.
Right.
So I studied with the same private lesson teacher. I think basically all 7 of those years through middle school and high school, Doug Harrington,
right.
Who was, I lucked out, and he happened to be the private lesson teacher at my schools and in the area that I lived in. And And then, of course, I also benefited from some great band directors, and so yeah, that was kind of the early stages. Not every band kid does this, but I also had kind of my side interest of playing drum set and playing in rock bands, and
Right.
Living the early '90s, Seattle wannabe grunge life,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but in Houston. But that was also really, really cool. It was like a really kind of formative experience, and like, putting a band together, and we gigged, and we didn't make a ton of money, but
Right.
we got paid here and there for doing some things, and played for audiences, and kind of mixed it up in the downtown Houston scene. So yeah, that was the early part.
Yeah. So some of outside of school, that could be some of the first sort of performance or professional experience, even in high school, then playing in bands or trying to put something together.
Without question. And it's again, I didn't realize it at the time, but it is absolutely, it mirrors the experience of even, early days of So Percussion,
Right.
in, putting programs together, putting concerts together, talking to presenters to, hey, can we come and play?
Right.
And early on sort of begging for the opportunity, and then eventually getting to a place where, you're getting a better spot on the bill, or a better venue, or actually getting paid, as opposed to probably paying to go play. But yeah, it was the same sort of deal, just in kind of a different way that like I said, at the time, I didn't realize.
Right. So then UT Austin is where you did some undergrad. Was that kind of, you knew you wanted to go into music, right away through high school, or?
Yeah. I wouldn't claim to know or to have known that at the time. I knew that enough to apply to music schools, but I didn't know what that meant necessarily. So I had one little brief kind of left turn into the Midwest for 1 year. My freshman year, I actually went to DePaul in Chicago, and but was only there for 1 year, and it was a great experience. But I wasn't, I wasn't ready, I think, maturity wise, to leave home. So I did transfer back.
I was going to ask you about that. Just curious how that fit in. But so that was kind of your freshman year, kind of when you were.
Yeah, that was my freshman year, and I was able to study with Jim Ross from the Chicago Symphony, and Michael Green, who was running the program at DePaul, and it was really great. It was a great place. I again was with some really great teachers. Just for personal reasons, didn't stick. But
it's pretty big for a kid right out of high school and trying to figure out what's going on, and in a big city and totally different kind of atmosphere and stuff. But
yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and I think for me, I'm glad I did it, because I have a little better perspective now for the prospective students that I'm talking to about potentially coming to Baylor or going elsewhere. I think we all obviously mature in different ways, and we all sort of hit our stride at different times in our lives. And for me, that wasn't the time for me to leave. The time for me to leave was for grad school, and then it felt fine at that point. But prior to that, it was just wasn't. I wasn't ready to be that far away from home, and I, in the end, it all worked out really, really well. I met my wife at UT Austin. I just love Austin as a place to be. My family and I were just there 2 days ago. It's still a place that's special to us. So I'm really glad that happened. And it opened up other opportunities and other doors. So looking back, it was all, I think, for good reason. But you just never know in the moment what's going to come out of it.
Right. And then obviously a bigger move out to Yale. And what was there kind of a big decision-making process there, or you knew you wanted to go study with Van Cise, or?
Yeah. So Bob came through UT and did a master class. probably my junior year, and I think maybe even sometime before that, he came down to Texas and did a masterclass at TCU. And me and a couple of buddies drove up to Fort Worth from Austin to see it. This is back when Nick Petrella was still teaching there, and
okay.
and I was just really enamored with Bob's teaching and with his approach, and so kind of, in a way fell under his spell. And then I just kind of kept seeking him out. So I went up a couple of times to take lessons during my undergraduate years, traveled up to New Haven to do that. And yeah, I mean, I shopped around other grad schools, but by the time it got to decision making and all of that, I really knew that I wanted to go there and to study with him. So yeah, that move felt really, really good. And I can't say enough about Bob and his teaching and his mentorship. So that was a really I think fortunate move for me. Of course, that's also where I found Doug and Tim and Jason, and early days of So were sort of birthed out of that time as well.
Right. And we'll get, I think, a little bit later, just kind of talking about some of your influences, and obviously Bob is a big one of those, and kind of what drives you in that direction. But so then So Percussion was that like a graduate ensemble, or was that something that he put together, or was that something totally separate that your students wanted to do?
Yeah, it was actually something that he inadvertently put together, because we were just four guys in the Yale percussion group who were assigned to the same piece to play together. And my memory is a little bit fuzzy. I don't remember if it was Third Construction or James Wood's Village Burial with Fire, but one of those pieces came before the other, and we were assigned to it. And by nature of it, both of those pieces being really, really challenging, and us digging in really deep, and then also just forming friendships and bonds over that experience. That was how the group was formed. So it was very much a school-based thing, at least initially.
Right.
But pretty quickly we realized that we wanted to do something beyond school with it. So it was sort of perfect, because this happened right when Jason and I started school there in 1999. Doug and Tim were already there. Tim for just a semester, and Doug had been there a full year before us. But it was early on in our time there, so we knew that we had a couple of years of just being together and having the ability to kind of nurture this thing and see where it would go.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because not only was it it was the beginning of So Percussion, but it was the beginning of your time at Yale. So that's great. You knew right away that you wanted to do something, and then you had kind of several years to nurture that and develop it. Go ahead.
The timing, I think, couldn't have been better, and even though it wasn't set up this way, looking back, we can kind of see how maybe it almost felt like a graduate ensemble in residence, and it wasn't that at all. Right. It wasn't intended to be that, but you have string quartets that find programs like that around the country, and it's kind of this perfect environment for them to basically build the early part of their careers, and this functioned in the same way. I mean, we did all of the other things we had to do as students there, but we knew that kind of our main focus was on the group.
Right. And then obviously you and Doug had a connection enough to once you kind of leave that area, you stayed connected. You wanted to play as a duo somehow. How did that develop?
Yeah, so I left New Haven in 2003 to come take the job at Baylor and to return home to Texas, essentially. And Doug was, of course, still in the group at that time, was still in So, and he played for another 3 years. So I think in 2006 was when he left, spring of 2006.
Oh, wow.
So the group had already moved to New York, had sort of left New Haven and set up shop in New York. And in '06, then, Doug split ways with them, and we were just kind of talking and chatting about, the future for both of us. And I think a little bit on a dare just said, hey, well, why don't we do something? We had kept our connection and our friendship and all of that. So it was very easy and fell into place very quickly. And, one of the best things about it is that we had played together for so long, and so that putting something together long distance while he was in New York and I was in Texas was actually pretty easy. We didn't have to learn how to work together or learn how to play together or anything. It's just we kind of fell in right off the bat. So that was the beginning of it in 2006, which is a long time ago now. But that's when we started that particular project.
Yeah, and I mean we've talked about it before off the air. Like that's what I always find pretty interesting about you two is that you've never been in the same state,
right,
before, other than a couple days before a gig or whatever,
right?
Or I don't know. Do you get together once or twice a year to play stuff, or how does that really work?
Yeah, kind of. It depends, and like all things, stuff sort of changes over time, and as we get older, I would say, kind of early to mid duo timeline, we had enough performances going on that we probably saw each other about once a month. And so there were times here and there where we did sort of a summer band camp, if we were learning new rep for the season or something. And, by that time, Doug was in New Hampshire. And so he had a nice studio in his house that we could camp out in, or he could come down to Texas and we could do the same thing at Baylor. So here and there, if we had kind of larger projects or maybe working up towards a recording, we would do some separate rehearsal events together. But most of the time it was just, show up a day or two before the show and put some things together, and assuming that we were both in shape, it would be good to go. More recently, we've kind of dialed things back. We're both, busy with a lot of stuff. Family and fatherhood being, one of the big things, and both Doug's son and my sons are of an age, I think, where it's kind of nice to be around. But different roles too with teaching. Doug has started teaching at Boston Conservatory, and he was serving as chair for his department last year, and I've taken over the chair of my department a couple years ago. And so I think now I would call it sort of a special projects ensemble. We were just together at Princeton to collaborate with So for a new sextet that Jason wrote. Doug came to my annual symposium in the spring, and he's a usual guest there. End of last summer, we had a big week in Montana. But it's sort of these special projects that that kind of come around every now and again, and we'll just sort of feel out the collaboration for what that is based on what the music and what the event is.
Right, and then I don't know. That keeps it. I mean, there are special projects or special events, but then that keeps the whole collaboration or the whole relationship special too. It's like that it'll come back together, and you'll be able to play together at some point. And
and that's for us. I think that's one of the best things about it is that Doug is one of my very best friends, and so it's it's just like, well, it's an excuse to hang out, and we like playing music too, so we'll do that while we're hanging.
Right. So you've been in Baylor 12 to 15 years then?
Just finished my 15th year. So 03 is when I started, and just finished year 15. So I guess that's kind of a long time. It's definitely long enough that I feel like I've been here for forever. But
right.
So but it's great. It's I've got a great studio and great kids to work with, and the school is very supportive, and all the stuff that you want out of that.
So when you started, was it like from the ground up?
Well,
or as far as building an apartment and recruiting and students?
Yeah, I think in some ways, yes. And that's not to say anything at all negatively about my predecessor, because Dr. Van Landingham was fantastic and had an incredible career here and has so many wonderful students and alumni of the studio who have gone on to do amazing things. The only reason it was a bit of a rebuild is because his health was failing towards the end of his time. And so, and that's of course why he retired, and unfortunately he passed away very soon after he retired. But he wasn't able for health reasons to do some of those I think kind of upkeep things that we have to do in these positions. That's also not to say that I didn't inherit a lot of really great students, because I did. There was some great talent here when I arrived. The numbers were just low. So a lot of it was just sort of, getting the studio back up to a healthy number. And like any, teacher change and regime change, I brought in a completely different aesthetic. And so that takes a while to kind of wash over the students, and on both sides, it takes a while for the students. It also takes a while for me to it's just sort of feeling the place out and understanding, who I'm working with and what works and what doesn't work. It did. I'd say it took a healthy number of years before it felt like, okay, this feels like what I envision it to be. And now we can, really just start doing our thing.
Right. Because, that I think that's a good point, because a lot of, we travel a little bit more as Black Swamp Percussion, going to some schools and universities and doing kind of show and tells or talking to educators and students. And several of the schools that I've been to have new professors. They have people there that have either just started or only been there a year or two. So it's a huge kind of acclimation for both the professor and the student, and taking a couple years for everybody to settle in is totally understandable, and makes sense, especially if you've had somebody there that's been there for a long time.
Right. But, and I think, that the good and the bad of that is that, there was a great deal of stability, at least in terms of, kind of what the studio did, because Van Landingham was here for over 40 years. But the bad is that if you do want to change anything, it takes a while. I will say this: the students that were in the studio at that time were amazing and so gracious and open, and I think just sort of hungry and ready to adopt some new things. And so it could have been far more challenging. They really made it quite easy, I think.
Yeah. Cool. So in our travels as Black Swamp and talking to educators and students, everybody's heard of Liquidrum.
All right.
And everybody's watching the videos and following on social media. And not to be rude, not everybody understands it.
Right.
But I think that's like part of the coolness, that's part of the cool factor of it. Like, so like, how did that, I mean, I know you've been doing it for a couple years now, but it had to have been several years before that, even, like you're thinking through what other contribution maybe you want to make to the percussion community, or instruction wise, or just information. And obviously with social media and all the stuff kids are doing nowadays, like that makes accessibility a little bit easier. So you're starting to put together some of these pieces. Like, can you talk through a little bit how that began to take shape?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I've become, I do self-analyze a lot, and so I feel like I'm pretty good about being aware about my own feelings and desires and sort of directions perhaps I want to take, at least career-wise. And so I think the early stages, kind of the nugget of this idea was just thinking about I had probably logged, I don't know, 10 to 12 years at Baylor, and obviously had all this chamber music experience, playing with So, and then a long time with Doug, and a smattering of orchestral things here and there. And I think I just got to a point of like, okay, what's next? What will hold my or capture my attention for the next decade or 2 decades, or who knows? And so I think a lot of it was just a little bit of unrest. Not that I was unhappy with anything that I was doing, but just kind of searching for new creative outlets. And the idea of putting it all under the umbrella of Liquidrum was just that was basically organizational. I just thought, okay, here are a number of things I want to do. I want to write a book of some sort, and maybe multiple books. I do want to write some music eventually. I haven't done a ton of that, but I want to. I want to keep performing for sure. Obviously, I want to keep teaching. So how do I wrap all of that into one thing, one idea, and that's basically the simple gist of it is that. Now, in doing that, a lot of other things sort of sprung up. So I didn't go into it thinking I'm going to make a series of satirical videos, making fun of what I do and what all of my friends do. That grew totally, in an organic way and an unexpected way, to be honest. But that's sort of the beauty of it, as you start to scratch a new itch. I think you do kind of find other things that open up, and that just sort of caught my interest. And I thought, okay, let me do more of it because I enjoy doing it. I wanted to work on just sort of the video production element of things because that's a good tool to have. And I was on sabbatical, so I wasn't teaching, so I had free time. And that's when I put out the vast majority of those videos. So, in kind of a broad generalization of what Liquidrum is it, it's a percussion company. Now it's not a gear company like Black Swamp, and I don't make sticks like Big Firth or whatever, but it is a company. It is a sort of both a commercial and artistic and I guess creative endeavor. But it's something that I'm going to use as my platform going forward, to put out the stuff I want to put out. So, thus far, at least the first volume of my accessories book, and most recently my practice journal, and then just a number of other what I call sort of percussion lifestyle items, and just kind of the general swag stuff, but stuff that I hope is valued and seen as fun and engaging and kind of community based. That whether people know exactly what it is or is not, at least they can kind of get behind it and think like, well, this makes me smile every now and again. So yeah.
No, I totally appreciate it. I mean, several years ago when you kind of first reach out and started to tell me, hey, I'm going to start doing this. I want to write a book, or I'm going to do a couple videos, and it hadn't fully taken shape yet. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to help however we can, and it sounds awesome. And then it was like, boom, like Liquidrum was like, it was just super cool. And I understand, I totally get how like it evolves, because the same types of thing happen here. We start doing videos or trying to get content, and you gradually want to make things better and more well produced, and then also we take what we do seriously, just like you do, but we don't take ourselves too seriously either. It's like, obviously, you don't. So that, we try to let some of our humor or our personality come through in what we're doing, because I think you're totally right. I mean, people, you want to engage them, and you want to inform, and you want to educate, but yet you would like them to leave with a smile on their face, or find something of interest with what's happening. So I totally appreciate it, and I know like I said, everyone I talk to um, thinks it's hilarious, but
That's
also
good. It's good to hear.
just sees a right, like it's supposed to be hilarious, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a great concept, and execution is excellent. So, so you got the the book and practice journal, some other swag type stuff. I mean, is there anything else you're kind of working through with that, or it's as it comes?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's in some ways as it comes, only in that it's as the ideas come into my head. But I am trying to be fairly systematic in, how I'm going to, release future things and what comes next, and
Right.
all of this too is, I sort of just purely for giggles, my social media existence is sometimes positioned, through Liquidrum as if there is some sort of team or other people working for it, and
Right.
and there's literally no one else other than my very, very talented graphic designer,
Right.
and at least for this last project, also a typeface designer. They do all of that sort of thing. But in terms of the content
Right.
build and everything else, it's all I do all of it myself. So it just
Yeah,
all that to say, it takes me a really long time to
Oh, yeah.
do stuff. Like I have 50 ideas of things I want to do, whether it's new videos or content or new product, and it it's probably going to take me 50 years to do all of them. But yeah, the next thing, I want to, as I release something new like this practice journal, which is just a couple of well, it was a summer release. I mean, we did a Kickstarter, and it's basically been available for purchase otherwise, following the Kickstarter, just for a couple of weeks. So I want to kind of I want to ride this for a while. I want to be able to kind of care for the delivery of it, and spreading the word, and just work on the marketing. And I do think that in some ways there is an advantage to that as well, because as a super, super, super small organization, I can take the time and attention to detail of all of that very seriously, and just say, well, I'm just gonna focus on this, and I'm gonna do it for as long as I think I need to do it in order to launch the thing and get it out, as much as I can, and then I'll shift gears to the development of something new. I'm debating. The new thing is either going to be a snare drum etude collection book type deal, or the second volume of the accessories thing, which is bass drum and cymbals. And that I've been working on for a long time. I just don't know what I want to release it in the not too distant future, because I don't want volume 1 to come out in 2016, and then volume 2 comes out in 2035 or something like that, because that doesn't make any sense. So I do need to get that out, but I'm just kind of feeling this snare drum itch, and I'd love to go scratch that for a while. So we'll see what comes next.
Yeah, great. Is this connected to Baylor at all? And I mean, do you bounce stuff off your students, or some ideas come from? I mean, obviously you're teaching, so it's all connected. But it's a separate. Obviously, it's a separate identity, but it kind of stems from some of the same things.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think basically what you just said is exactly what it is, which is inevitably all of this sort of comes out of my experiences of the everyday teaching with my students, and some of it, like a lot of the video gear I got initially, and money in order to put out the first book came from a Baylor grant. So I'm able to sort of lean on some institutional support, and they've been really great about supporting even sort of commercial endeavors like this, not sort of purely academic endeavors. But yes, as far as identity and organization, completely separate. It's hard though, because they are intertwined. But I think the vast majority of the time I have seen that as a good thing. I can tell you for sure that it has helped, my recruiting at Baylor. There are many, students that are auditioning here that they are here because of perhaps some of those videos, or because they have been following what I've been putting out on social media. So it's all reciprocal. It all works together. And even though, depending on the time of year, one, will sort of absorb my time in ways like, during the school year, it's really hard for me to put a ton of attention into Liquidrum stuff. It's still a good relationship, because it is still feeding that thing, whether I'm actively working on it or not.
Great. And well, I think connected to the Liquidrum concept and ideas is some stuff I've read of yours about creativity and about performance and just overall, I don't know if you could, philosophies, I guess, or just sort of ideologies. So, like, for instance, there was a blog post I wrote of yours about the hustle and grind, and essentially taking time to think and to live, and not sort of run yourself into the ground. I mean, is that, over the years, ideas that you've developed and kind of integrated into Liquidrum, or is that sort of separate? It's all connected, obviously, but
I think it's a big part of it. And I think one of the reasons I want and need there to be humor embedded in a lot of this is simply for the enjoyment factor. Like I jokingly tell my wife all the time, like I desperately want to right, but I'm only 41 years old, so that's not going to happen anytime soon.
I'm ready to retire.
Yeah. I really, at least right now, and who knows, maybe it's 40-year-old man midlife crisis time for me. But I'm really kind of feeling the kind of the magic of what it means to slow things down and to perhaps be a little bit more alive and awake and in tune with what's going on around me, and not just kind of head to the grindstone plowing away. It's just a very different existence than I had when I was in my mid to late 20s, when it was just about how many concerts could I do, and what new rep can I learn, and what can I record, and what can I commission, and all of that. And I think I'm perhaps in a more observational state of life or of existence right now. And so those are the things that I think are just of greater value to me. And and of course, it's where I am. It's not where everybody is. But I do think it's nice to hear that, because when I was 26 and started here, and when I was doing all the stuff I was doing with maybe early duo days, I didn't know that it would be okay at some point in my life to maybe not do it that way. I kind of thought, well, this is what you do. This is what it means to do this. And my existence needs to be built around just sort of garnering, trophies and awards and accolades for, not that we get trophies and awards for, playing concerts, but, basically every new concert I can put on my website or my CV. And that's what it's about. That's what this is supposed to be. And I think there are parts of what we do that are supposed to be like that. But I'm finding there are many, many other parts that are quite different and are still of equal value. And and I acknowledge that, I think part of it is just getting a little bit older. But I want to still have life in me at at the age of 60, and I don't want to be burned out, and I don't want to burn myself out doing this stuff so much that I quit before I get there. Because I think that can happen. I think it can and has happened to other people.
Well, and I think what's one thing you said, which is I think really important, is it is good for people to hear. Like
Right.
it's okay to not run yourself into the ground by the time you're 40. And I think
Right.
you're right. It is sort of a age and perspective thing, but for you to be able to uh, you know, talk about it with your students or to talk about it on, one of your other platforms, like I think that's really important for people to hear because I think tied to it also is success. Like you're talking about awards or accolades or notoriety or recognition. Like
Right.
there that's how you typically, I guess, measure success. But I think there's other ways to like, how do you, as you're kind of working through this, obviously, you've been teaching for a long time and you've been involved in ensemble stuff and Liquidrum. Like, how did you kind of stay grounded or measure success as you were doing that maybe wasn't connected to a specific award or notoriety?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think what I found and what I still find now, and one of the reasons I kind of like where I am with things right now is that um, I find that all of that stuff, or some version of that stuff, still comes in some way um, with basically what I feel like I'm doing now, which is trying to just feed into the community. Like, and I don't want to put it or phrase it as sort of, I mean, I'm giving back to the community,
Right.
because that's patting myself on the back in a way that I don't mean to. But, I think like whenever I post something on social media, as silly as it seems, I do feel like I'm trying to feed some part of the community. And if I every now and again, either have in an interview with you, have you say, "Hey, we've gone around the country and people are into this," or get just
Right.
a direct message back from someone on Instagram saying like, "Hey, thank you so much for this or for posting this or whatever." Like that for me is really fulfilling.
Right.
And again, not to stroke my ego, but just to know that like, oh, this is doing something. Hopefully, there is some value that is associated with this that people are getting something out of it. And I think the reward part of it is just that. And so and that's pretty easy. Like I can
Yeah.
I mean if I can be satisfied with that, then I think I could probably do this for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that I'm, not going to perform anymore. Like getting together with So and Doug a couple weeks ago in Princeton was great fun, and we're gonna do it again and play a proper concert of Jason's tunes and any collaboration we have. Like all of that, I really look forward to as well. And I, that still needs to be a part of what I do in order to legitimize any of these other things that I put out. But I don't need to do 50 of those things a year anymore. Right. And that just it doesn't appeal to me in ways that it used to.
Sure. So we talked a little bit about Van Cise being an early inspiration of yours. I mean, is there anyone else, music or non-music related, that you find or get inspiration from, and also kind of help maintain your motivation or keep you focused on what you're doing?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, basically, it's sort of the circle around me. If I'm talking musically, I am mainly drawing inspiration from, and this was true even when I was a student, but I'm drawing inspiration from my friends and my colleagues.
Right.
And this was even true in my undergraduate years. I had two close friends. Eric Garcia, who has gone on to be an orchestral conductor, and Andy Bodwin, who's a jazz drummer. We were in the studio together at UT, and those guys were sort of my pool of inspiration and motivation back then. And then it turned into, my graduate school colleagues at Yale, who are still my inspiration and motivation. I still get great joy out of hearing about whatever Doug's, next big project is and crazy thing that he's doing or what So is doing. And so musically, that really is where it comes from. And then beyond that, my family, my wife, she's an educator, but just the things that she thinks about and gets fired up about and wants to do, like drawing inspiration and drawing, sort of parallels between our two worlds. And I mean those are the things. I'm not and never have been kind of the guy that's like, well, Neil Peart is the one who gives me inspiration. Maybe
blasphemy. Of course, it's Neil Peart.
right. Yeah, it's a little bit closer to home for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, obviously at work we're constantly, it's like a second family or a first family. It feels like sometimes. I mean, we're with each other 8 hours a day for 5 days a week or more, and we're constantly bouncing ideas off each other or talking about things, product related, marketing related. But I'm sort of the same for me at home. My wife is a graphic designer, and she's been in the arts for a long time, and we kind of keep our eye on a lot of the same things as far as social media and marketing things and brand awareness and strategy. And we are constantly bouncing ideas off each other and what, she freelanced for a long time and now she's more in the corporate world. So just kind of feeding off each other, I think and to be able to go home and invent whatever you need to do, but then also help each other pick up the pieces and figure out, what's going on professionally. And, I think is really important. I totally relate. So
and just in the exact same way. I mean, I think that's one of the things too that I think has been really good for me lately is just kind of getting outside the percussion world, getting outside the music world. Sure. And like, how does the rest of the world function? Because they probably do a lot of this really well already. What can we draw on here and maybe bring back a little bit?
Well, I mean, that's what when my wife and I talk about things, I mean, she's in the again, graphic designer, but she worked in a fitness industry for a long time. Now she's kind of in the food industry and so really inspired by just photography in general. So she'd be like, check out this Instagram feed or check out what they're doing or look at this new thing that this company's doing or whatever. Like, so yeah, I definitely draw a lot of inspiration of what's happening outside of the music and percussion community specifically. But so as we're kind of wrapping things up a little bit, I have a few other topic oriented questions.
Sure.
We just kind of like to get an idea of what people are doing. So when you are getting ready to play with Doug or even stuff you're doing in Baylor, do you have a pre-performance routine? Like you lock yourself up in a room somewhere for a half hour and only eat green M&Ms, or do you have or do you have something you do basically before a performance that really kind of puts you in the right mindset to play?
Yeah, I can't say that I've ever had the luxury of being able to do that. I would really like to do that. The reality is, like, especially if it's a Baylor related thing, like our schedules are crazy enough that usually before the concert or whatever, it's like running home, trying to eat dinner, with the family, or maybe I'm bringing the boys back up with me. It's like I'm so kind of not focused on the concert that in a good way, it becomes it may feel like a stressor at the time, but it's actually kind of a nice distraction. So that I don't just sit and obsess about the thing. I'll do, and this is very, very small, but just before I go on, I'll do sort of a routine of deep breathing and just try to center myself a little bit. But I do think, the benefit of my earlier years of first So and then stuff with Doug is that I've performed a lot. And I don't get overly freaked out about walking on stage.
Yeah, sure.
So, and it's so that, I mean, I'm not saying so therefore I don't need to do anything before I play.
Right.
But I don't need to decompress for 2 hours and sit in a dark room or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I think just the sort of normalcy of going about your daily life, spending some time with your family or having dinner or just relaxing in general, I think is important. What else do you do besides music?
Well, I like to read when I can. I like to be outside as much as I can, but this is being said from someone who lives in a place that is hotter than the sun for a lot of the year.
Right.
So
that was going to be my first question when we started. It was like, "Oh, is it hot in Texas right now?" Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's miserable.
Yeah, and so that'll last, through October. But the winter and like early spring are actually really great here. So even though there are less leaves on the trees, the temperatures are pretty mild. So that's a good time to kind of be outdoors. We really like to travel, and especially now with the kids at the age that they are, it's just something that I think both my wife and I feel like we need to put a big priority on. We didn't have an opportunity to really do significant traveling this summer. We're going to head down to the beach this weekend, which will be fun. But we feel like getting out of the place that we live is important. That this is the time, but I think both in our lives, but also in the lives of our kids, that like we just need to go see other things and get a taste for other things, and form some good memories that way.
So your kids are old enough to have fun, but not too old that they don't enjoy spending time with you anymore.
Yeah, they really are kind of in the sweet spot.
A small window, right?
Yeah, the oldest one is 12, and they're both boys, so it's not a 12-year-old girl. It's a 12-year-old boy, and that's a different thing. And so I think
boys and girls are different. You're right.
Yeah, you're right. I think they actually do still really like to hang out with us. So Yeah, we want to take advantage of that for a while.
Yeah, I have a girl. She just turned 11, so we're waiting. My wife and I are just kind of waiting. I mean, we already get eye rolls and sort of stomping away. So we're like, okay, well, the day's coming, I think, where she just doesn't even want to be in the same room with us anymore. But
That's right.
Right. So any, I know this is kind of open, but any guilty musical pleasures? Like you really like listening to Zeppelin cover bands or something?
I actually don't like cover bands in general, so that wouldn't be mine. But no, I wouldn't say guilty pleasure. Like if I'm just doing like listening for the sake of listening, I like kind of folksy stuff. Independent artists. I like most things along those lines that come out of the UK. So I wouldn't call any of that a guilty pleasure. I'd just call it a pleasure.
Right. Yeah.
I actually don't. Maybe my guilty pleasure is not listening to percussion music. I often don't ever think to put on the latest percussion album because it's just too much. I do it all day, every day. So I really kind of need, I need some escapism with what I actually feed into my ears.
Right. So how far are you from Austin then? My geography's horrible.
100 miles to the north. Yeah. Waco is actually just perfectly in the middle between Austin and the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Oh, okay. So, not too far to go to get some. We have some good restaurants and cultural things to do here, but to get some very good restaurants and some very good cultural things, we often have to travel an hour and a half. But that's not too much to ask, I don't think.
No, not at all. Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk with us. We obviously covered a lot. So
yeah, of course.
Thanks for kind of opening up about some stuff, and yeah, it was great to hear about, get your story basically, where you kind of came from and how you got to where you are now. So it's much appreciated, and we appreciate your support as an artist, and look forward to everything you're doing in the future.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is really, really fun, and anything to support the Black Swamp cause. I think you guys are great and do amazing things. So I'm just happy to be involved.
Cool. Thanks, Todd.
All right.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio assistance by Nathan Coles. And music by Adam Hopper.
Okay, we're done now. So, cool. Well, sorry. I'll press stop.